In a world where every celebrity moment is broadcast, dissected and replayed 1,000 times, Miranda Lambert's sudden silence hit harder than any headline. The country superstar, known for her fearless honesty and fiery Southern charm, shocked fans and insiders alike when she abruptly refused to sit down for a major televised interview just hours before filming was set to begin. No warning, no explanation, just a quiet, "I'm not doing this." The decision left the media scrambling and fans speculating. For an artist who built her career on being unapologetically open, this silence felt deafening. But behind that quiet might be something far more powerful, a turning point. Because what if Miranda Lambert's refusal wasn't just about one interview, but about reclaiming control in a world that constantly demands more than she's willing to give? Long before she became one of country music's most commanding presences, Miranda Lambert was just a small-town girl from Lindale, Texas, with a fire in her soul and something to prove. She wasn't the polished Nashville prototype. She was raw, bold, and unfiltered, a young woman who sang about heartbreak, revenge, and survival with a grit that instantly set her apart. Her breakout moment came on the reality competition Nashville Star in 2003, where audiences were introduced to a performer who didn't play by the rules. Even then, Lambert made it clear she wasn't interested in being anyone's idea of perfect. Her debut album, Kerosene, exploded onto the scene and announced the arrival of a new kind of country artist, one who could be tough without losing her tenderness. Songs like Gunpowder and Lead and Famous in a Small Town gave listeners an unfiltered look into her world, where heartbreak met resilience and honesty ruled over image. Fans connected with her because she said the things others were too afraid to say. She wasn't performing for approval. She was speaking her truth. From the start, Miranda built her brand around authenticity. She once said that her greatest goal was to make music that felt real enough to sting. And for years, that rawness became her signature. Whether she was baring her heart or calling out double standards, she made vulnerability her weapon. And that honesty, so rare in a world built on curated perfection, turned her into something bigger than a singer. She became a voice for anyone who's ever felt misunderstood, underestimated, or told to stay quiet. But as her star rose, so did the spotlight. And soon that same honesty that made her relatable would become the very thing that the media tried to exploit. As Miranda's career skyrocketed, the spotlight that once celebrated her authenticity began to burn a little too bright. By the late 2000s, she was no longer just a rising star. She was country music's bold new face, sweeping up awards, topping charts, and captivating audiences across the nation. Her marriage to fellow country icon Blake Shelton only amplified that fame, turning the two into Nashville's golden couple, the kind of pair that magazines couldn't resist and fans couldn't stop watching. But with fame came an unforgiving kind of exposure. Every lyric she wrote, every red carpet appearance, every expression caught by a camera became a story. The tabloids dissected her marriage, speculated on her emotions, and turned her heartbreak into a public spectacle. When that marriage ended in 2015, the media frenzy only intensified. Headlines multiplied overnight, painting Miranda as everything from the broken-hearted ex to the rebellious outlaw. And through it all, she said almost nothing. Still, even as she faced relentless scrutiny, Miranda kept showing up. For her fans, for her band, and most importantly, for her art. Albums like The Weight of These Wings and Wildcard revealed a woman who wasn't running from her pain, but transforming it into something beautiful. Each song became a quiet answer to the noise, a way of reclaiming her own story on her own terms. Yet no matter how personal her music became, the media wanted more. Interviews, gossip, sound bites. They wanted access to Miranda the person, not just Miranda the artist. And that constant demand began to wear her down. The same openness that had once made her relatable now made her vulnerable. And somewhere along the line, Miranda Lambert began to realize that honesty comes with a cost. The price of being real in a world obsessed with stories isn't fame, it's freedom. And for Miranda, the battle to protect that freedom was only just beginning. In the years following her highly publicized divorce, Miranda Lambert began to pull back, not from her fans but from the noise surrounding her life. The woman who once gave the world unfiltered honesty started setting quiet boundaries. She stopped feeding the gossip cycle, refused to explain every rumor, and turned her focus inward. It wasn't about hiding, it was about healing. Behind the scenes, those closest to her noticed the shift. She was tired of watching her words get twisted, her intentions questioned, and her emotions repackaged into tabloid headlines. "If I tell the truth, they twist it. If I stay quiet, they make something up," she once admitted, a line that perfectly captured her frustration with the press. Over time, she learned that silence can be its own form of strength. Instead of fighting to control the narrative, Miranda began to let go of it altogether. Her interviews became rarer, her answers more measured, and her public appearances increasingly centered on the music itself. This wasn't retreat, it was strategy. She was taking back ownership of her story, one boundary at a time. By 2024, that new philosophy was clearer than ever. Her creative projects reflected a woman deeply rooted in peace and self-definition. The release of Postcards from Texas wasn't just another album. It was a statement. Stripped back, intimate, and unapologetically reflective, the record proved that Miranda no longer needed headlines to make an impact. Her songs were doing the talking, and they spoke volumes. The fiery rebel who once sang about kicking down doors was now learning the quiet power of closing them. And in doing so, she was redefining what strength looks like for a woman in country music. Not loud, not defensive, but steady, sure, and completely her own. But as she rebuilt those walls of privacy, few could have predicted how far she'd take it next, or how one single decision would ignite a storm louder than any song she'd ever. So, when word broke that Miranda Lambert had abruptly cancelled a major televised interview just hours before cameras were set to roll, the news sent shockwaves through Nashville and beyond. This wasn't a small podcast or a minor appearance. It was meant to be a headline-making sit-down ahead of her upcoming tour and album release. Everything was ready: lighting, crew, the stage, even her wardrobe. Then, in a move that no one saw coming, Miranda told her team, "I'm not doing this." And just like that, it was over. For an artist who's built her reputation on being bold and unafraid to speak her mind, the silence was deafening. Fans immediately took to social media to make sense of it. Within minutes, Miranda Lambert began trending as messages poured in, a mix of confusion, curiosity, and overwhelming support. "She owes no one an explanation," one fan wrote. "If Miranda's quiet, it's for a reason." Others speculated that something had happened behind the scenes, that maybe the questions planned for the interview had crossed a line, or that she simply wasn't ready to expose another part of her private life. Sources close to Lambert described her decision as deeply personal, though none offered details. What's known is that she'd been fully prepared until the last moment, suggesting something shifted suddenly, something that made her choose silence over exposure. And while no one outside her inner circle knows exactly what happened, the speculation has been relentless. Rumors suggest that emotional exhaustion could be a factor. Between managing her businesses, constant touring, and the expectations that come with fame, burnout isn't far-fetched. Others believe it's a creative move, that Miranda wants her new music to do the talking instead of another round of recycled interview questions. Some even point to her rocky history with the press, noting that she's had past experiences where her words were taken out of context or twisted into headlines that barely resembled the truth. Regardless of the reason, this single act, refusing to speak, has sparked a louder conversation than any quote ever could. Fellow artists quickly rallied behind her. Casey Musgraves tweeted, "Sometimes not talking is the bravest thing you can do." Industry insiders agreed, calling it a rare example of a celebrity choosing self-protection over publicity. One record label executive reportedly said, "She's earned the right to say no. Miranda doesn't owe anyone access to her soul." But beneath the sympathy lies a deeper question. What happens when an artist known for her openness decides she's had enough? Is it a moment of defiance or simply self-preservation? Whatever the truth, one thing's certain: Miranda Lambert's silence has become louder than any interview ever could, and as the world debated her reasons, a bigger story began to take shape, one that goes far beyond a single cancelled appearance. Miranda Lambert's decision to walk away from that interview didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the product of years spent under an unforgiving microscope. In today's celebrity culture, where exposure is currency, Fame often demands a kind of surrender. Every story, every emotion, every mistake becomes public property. For many artists, it's the unspoken deal that comes with success. The world gives you attention, and in return, you give the world pieces of yourself. But Miranda's refusal may signal that she's done playing by those rules. Her silence isn't rebellion for its own sake. It's reclamation. It's the sound of a woman taking back ownership of her narrative after years of watching others rewrite it for her. When she told the media no, she wasn't shutting out her fans. She was shutting out the noise. The pressures faced by women in country music make this even more significant. Female artists are often expected to be both strong and endlessly approachable, bold but likable, honest but not too honest. They're told to open up, but only in ways that make for good headlines. Miranda has seen firsthand how that double standard plays out. When she spoke her truth, she was called difficult. When she stayed quiet, she was accused of hiding something. In the end, she realized she couldn't win, so she stopped trying to. Industry observers see her move as more than personal. They see it as cultural. In country music, silence from a superstar is rare, one analyst noted. But Miranda's refusal challenges the system itself. She's reminding the industry that vulnerability isn't a product, it's a choice. And it's a choice more artists are starting to make. In a time when constant oversharing has become the norm, choosing privacy can feel almost revolutionary. Miranda's silence forces the question, do we really need to know everything about the people who make the art we love? Or have we confused access with connection? By closing the door on the media, even temporarily, Miranda may have opened a larger conversation about what it means to survive fame with your soul intact. And in an era obsessed with content and exposure, her quiet refusal might be the most powerful thing she's ever done. But for Miranda, this wasn't about fading away. It was about redefining what control looks like. And soon, she'd show exactly how she planned to do that, not with words, but with something much more meaningful. For Miranda Lambert, silence isn't emptiness, it's space. The kind of space where creativity breathes, where stories unfold without being interrupted by noise. After years of interviews, headlines, and endless commentary, she seems to have chosen the most powerful form of communication she's ever had. Her music. Those close to her say she's been spending long stretches in Texas, far from Nashville's constant buzz. There, surrounded by open skies and quiet roads, she's been writing again, not for the charts, not for the press, but for herself. Her upcoming project, rumored to build on the rootsy storytelling of Palomino and the reflective honesty of The Weight of These Wings, is said to dig deeper than ever before. Insiders describe it as raw, stripped down, and healing. In a way, it's a return to the very thing that made Miranda a star in the first place, the truth in her voice. She doesn't need a camera crew or a headline to express what she's feeling. It's already there in her lyrics. Through songs, she's always told her story on her own terms. Every heartbreak, every rebirth, every chapter of her life has found its way into melody. And now, by refusing to speak publicly, she's returning to that original language, one her fans understand best. Some believe this choice is part of a larger creative reset. Rather than letting interviews define her narrative, she's letting her art take center stage. It's a bold move in an era when musicians are pressured to be influencers as much as artists. But Miranda has never been one to follow trends. She makes her own. The decision to remain silent then isn't withdrawal, it's clarity. It's the act of a woman who knows that her worth isn't measured by how much she reveals, but by how deeply she connects through what she creates. And perhaps that's the point. In a world where everyone's shouting to be heard, Miranda Lambert has chosen the one thing nobody expected, to whisper through song. But even as her silence continues, one question lingers. What message will her next words or her next verse deliver? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that when Miranda Lambert finally decides to speak, she never says anything halfway. Miranda Lambert's decision to walk away from that high-profile interview may have stunned the world, but in truth, it speaks to something far bigger than a single cancelled appearance. It's a statement about control, boundaries, and the courage to protect oneself in an industry that rarely allows either. In refusing to perform on someone else's terms, she has reclaimed the narrative and reminded everyone that silence can be louder than any headline. Her fans, as always, understand. Social media overflowed with messages of support, urging her to take her time, praising her for protecting her energy, and affirming that her music has always been the real story. In an age dominated by oversharing, Miranda's choice challenges the notion that celebrities must constantly explain themselves to remain relevant. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is nothing at all. This isn't a retreat. It's a declaration. Her art, her voice, and her peace come first. By letting her music speak, she proves that true connection doesn't require constant exposure. It requires authenticity, patience, and trust in her own story. As fans await her next move, one thing is certain: Miranda Lambert's silence is not absence, it's power. And when she does return, through lyrics, performances, or perhaps another unexpected statement, the world will be listening, not for the words she chooses to say, but for the ones she never needed to speak. In a culture obsessed with commentary and immediacy, Miranda Lambert reminds us all that sometimes the boldest statement is the one left unspoken.